everyone. As I am going deeper and deeper into my study and understanding of what the future holds for all of us, I'm so excited to have with us Amit Doshi, who is the founder and head of India's #1 podcasting network, IVM Podcasts. IVM, as you know, produces a wide range of shows on topics ranging from sports to fashion and public policy to pop culture. Amit is a serial entrepreneur with a track record of success in the tech and digital space, founded IVM in 2016, and it grew to become India's leading and largest podcasting network. In his career, he's been in the media space and has successfully worked at companies such as Lama Productions, W80 Media, and Madlock Technologies. Today, along with headlining IVM, he is also a podcaster himself. Graduated with a degree in mass communication from the University of Delaware. And I am told his other two passions are drinking Diet Coke and watching American football. So, Doshi, thank you so much for taking time away from all your interesting lives, passions, and commitments, and doing this for me. So uh, let's get
Thank
started.
you.
Thank you for doing this.
Thanks.
Now, as you sort of sit at the helm of this organization and you've seen this media space from a very long time, you've studied mass media, why, from your vantage point, is it important to even have this conversation? Why do we need to think about the future?
Well, I mean, if we just think about how much the world is, so I graduated college in 1996, so that's 28 years ago. If we just think about how much the world has changed in that much time, it kind of like it's unrecognizable, right? I remember I sent my first email while I was in college, and to send that email, it was such a like it was not an easy job to send an email, right? But you had to learn how to do it, and you had to sign into a server, and you had to like basically you had to use these kinds of text commands that get email or get messages or something like that, and it was just really kind of complicated to do that stuff. And then you had things like Hotmail come up, which basically turned email into something everybody's using. And so I mean, like it's email, it's fax, it's communication, it's just everything's changed so much in the last 25 years. And the interesting thing that I see, right, is that the kinds of technologies that we're seeing right now in terms of particularly in media and communications, right? There are two aspects which I think are visible right now, but I think that's also just the tip of the iceberg in how AI is going to impact media as we go forward, and how augmented reality slash virtual reality is going to impact the media as we go forward. So, I mean, like these two things are at its extreme nascent stages. They're at the stages where my email thing that I'm talking about from 1994 was, right? That's where
That's
these
where it is.
technologies are right now, right? We haven't even seen Gmail, which is 20 years old, right?
Mm.
Yet. And so, I mean, like, where are these going to go? And, like, what's the future of messaging, right? Forget Gmail to WhatsApp, WhatsApp to Instagram. These are all messaging platforms, right? So, I mean, like, we don't even know where these evolutions are going yet. So, to not pay attention to it, to not kind of, try and think this stuff through, I mean, that would be the definition of short-sighted, wouldn't it?
All right. Okay. So you're saying we've seen a lot of change, and I feel like our generation specifically, like, has seen a lot more change than probably 3 generations ago. I think the rate
Mhm.
of acceleration wasn't as rapid as it is now. But
I
we're,
think it's different, right? Like, I honestly, I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt, right? But I've thought a little bit about this, right? Because again, like, why does it feel so much more accelerated for us?
Hmm.
And there is an interesting thesis put out by, I think it's a Harvard professor only, which is talking about, like, the kinds of technical revolutions that we have had different kinds of impacts. And so there have been revolutions over the years, right? In our people who grew up between the 1900s and say maybe the 1930s, they saw transportation revolutions, right? People who grew up between the 1930s and the 1960s, they saw consumer revolutions, right, in terms of just the kinds of products, the distribution, etc. And those who came after the 1960s saw communication revolutions, right? So I think that the march of human progress is kind of there. It's visible. It's just that the communication piece of it is such that it is spoken about in ways which I think are more accessible to people, right? I mean, like whether it's a diesel engine or a, gas engine, a fuel injector or a carburetor, I just get in my car and drive. I don't care, right? I mean, like, whereas how I talk to people is something that I think can be communicated a little better, right? So I think that's why we feel that, but I think it's kind of a graph of just like, especially since the Industrial Revolution and even earlier, right? It just feels like it is something that has been around. It feels like it feels like this progress is consistent, right? It's just different areas at different times. Where do we uh where does the concentration of human intelligence and human effort lie?
Okay. All right. Okay. So, got to keep a pulse on the future. Been seeing change for many, many generations. It's been happening. It's going to happen to us. So,
Mhm.
short sighted if we don't keep a pulse on the future. Okay. And you're saying it's also sort of more all pervasive. It's affecting like literally every minute of how we talk to people, how we interact with one another. And
Mhm.
therefore, it seems a little bit more obvious in terms of the delta
Yeah.
as compared to earlier. Okay, great. Okay, thank you for setting the context. Thanks for talking about the different revolutions. Let's talk a little bit about, you touched upon this a little bit in terms of the digital revolution that's
Mhm.
coming. So, what are some of the factors you're seeing influence your industry specifically? People have talked about governance, DEI, sustainability, and tech as the
Mhm.
primary factors. So, if you could talk about what they are and specifically how they're influencing your organization.
Well, I mean, like for us, so we are in some ways a very old medium, in some ways a very new medium, right? When you talk about podcasting, it essentially is talk conversations which people are listening to, right? People have been hearing people talk to each other for millennia. So I mean, like in some ways it's very old. What's new is the medium of delivery, how we're getting it out to people, right? And even that, like if you think about podcasting as a thing, right? The way I consumed my first podcast probably I think it's sometime in 2004, and this was part of my spiel when I was talking to people about investing in IVM when we first started. Right when I listened to my first podcast, I had to first find the podcast I wanted to listen to. Then I had to go to the iTunes app on my computer. I had to go and find the podcast over there. I had to download it over there. I had to then connect my iPod to my computer and then sync that podcast over, which I could then use to listen to it, right? That's a ridiculously clunky environment compared to now, where you go to Spotify or JioSaavn or any of the Amazon Music, any of the podcasting apps, just hit play, right? So the technical kind of revolution from our perspective becomes more of a delivery kind of thing. Now, in the last 2 years, what I
Ease of
find it,
access.
yeah,
You're saying the ease of access that has changed.
ease of access has changed, right? But I think what's interesting is, and again, I'm talking about podcasting in a very narrow sense here, but what I think has changed very interestingly in the last couple of years is that podcasting was initially a medium, right? It was something where it was derived from the word iPod, and it was like a pod that you are dropping and people are listening, right? But I feel like what's interesting that's happened over the last couple of years, and this is all evolution of media and medium, right? That instead of becoming a kind of medium, it has now become a kind of content type, because now podcasts in India at least, and definitely in India at least, but even globally, are consumed more over video than they're consumed over audio, right? So now it has become, what is a podcast? A podcast is a conversation, whereas earlier a podcast was a way to deliver a conversation. So these things, these definitions keep changing, they keep moving around.
Okay,
Uh,
but now very much it has its own category and it's very
mhm,
much recognized as an independent category that people say, "Hey, I'm consuming my content over podcast or I'm consuming my content over Instagram
mhm.
reels or whatever." So it most definitely is
So
recognized.
it's a content type now, right? It used to be a medium. Now it used to be a media type. Now it's a content type, which I think is interesting. It's an evolution just in terms of how people kind of think of these things.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Terrific. So now tell me a little bit about how are you using AI? Are you using any sort of these new age
Mhm.
technologies at the
So
organization?
we use AI, large language models, in a couple of different contexts. We do not do so one of the experiments which we tried for a very short time, but we kind of backed off from right now, was trying to use AI for delivering ad copy that you insert into podcasts. But we felt like technology is a little premature right now, and I also didn't want to freak out my creators. So we are just like, we kind of step back from that. We do use AI in two different contexts right now, and these are general available tools for AI. So context number one is ideation, right? So nobody in my office is allowed to submit AI content as their own work, but at the same time, they're allowed to use AI as a tool for generating ideas, right?
Mm.
Like, so for example, if we are working on a podcast around we're working on a podcast which is around financial history in some way, or we're working on a podcast which is around general history in some way, or something like that. We can use something like AI, or not even just history, like economic concepts or anything like that. We might use AI to give us some ideas that these are the kinds of episodes you can create,
Okay.
right? Then we have to do the work to actually create the episode, right? So what it does is it kind of gives us a starting point.
Mm.
The other place we use AI is we use a lot of AI now in artwork. We have started to use tools like Midjourney and the AI functionality that exists inside Adobe Photoshop pretty extensively. Whether it is for creating artwork, whether it is for creating storyboards for presentations and stuff like that, we started to use AI quite extensively over there.
Okay, great. Okay. Are you seeing your creators use AI? Are you seeing them rely on it to sort of come up with ideas?
So the thing is that I don't think they do. And we have had conversations with a number of them. I believe in this, right? I do kind of think that this is where we are right now, that you should use AI as a tool.
You should.
You should use AI to spark ideas. AI might give you an idea that you would never have thought of. But if you allow AI to do your job, then you're allowing AI to do your job. And by definition, you're allowing yourself to become replaceable,
Mm.
right? So you should use the tool as much as you can because it makes you more efficient. But you know, be aware of that. If you use it, if my creator starts writing scripts which are essentially AI generated, why do I need him or
Mm.
her? Right?
Okay.
I mean that's the truth of the matter, right? I mean, like, why do I need him or her then?
So use AI as an ally, and then obviously you be smart about how, it's becoming self-redundant
Yeah.
if you continue to use
No,
this.
and I also do believe that I do think that human thought and human creativity with the AI models that we have right now cannot simply be generated, right? I mean, sorry, cannot be duplicated, right? I mean, like AI models right now are kind of like they're really interesting and they're really helpful, but they're also extraordinarily limited, right? AI is not going to come up with a new idea.
Mm.
AI is going to regurgitate as it stands today. We're not in a generative AI space, right? We are in a space where we're working with statistical large language models. So AI is going to basically take stuff that exists and repurpose it and push it to you. And if you're going to do that, then there is no originality. And if you're okay with the lack of originality, so be it. But if you are, that also I think limits the it limits the appeal or limits the amount of success you're going to see. I mean, like, yeah, I think that that's when you're working in storytelling, media, etc., kinds of spaces, you need to bring something new to the table. If all you're doing is regurgitating what other people have done,
Are,
that's
are you seeing this as a concern in the creative community? Are they thinking that, hey, now anyone can become a creator, and like how do you know differentiate? And
I
what's the
do,
buzz?
I
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
I do
Okay.
see it as a concern. I see people starting to freak out a little bit. I also have seen scripts submitted to me which are clearly AI scripts.
Wow. Okay, you
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, like, you can tell, right? I mean, like, to some extent or the other, you have to do the work around it, or you can tell. So, I mean, like, there is a certain amount of concern over there, I think, in the creator community. Uh, I would say this, one of the challenges working with a lot of people in the creator community is they are creative folks and they allow their imaginations to run wild sometimes with this kind of stuff, and they're looking into a future 75 years ahead from now, or I don't know where it is, right? But it might be 5 years ahead from now. But they're
Mm.
looking at they're basically making connections that don't exist right now.
Mm.
They're imputing capabilities to technology which don't exist. When they are there, we have to figure out how to deal with
Okay.
them, right?
Okay.
But to not be clear-eyed about what these things can do right now is it's something I've seen quite a bit of, right? Like, there is panic that, oh my God, AI will take over everything and we will not be able to, we will all lose our jobs. And we are not just our jobs, we will have no more work and the world will just be AI content being pushed to people over. And I'm like, yeah, but when that happens, there is a natural tendency for people who are consuming like the people consuming the content are not Autobots either, right? I mean, like, they're real people. And if you keep giving them AI generated rubbish,
Mm.
then you're not going to, I mean, like, that consumption will not occur either. So I mean, like there is concern. I think at this point in time, given where things are right now, it might be a little overblown. It doesn't mean that we should not be aware and we should not keep track and we should not know what is going on, but I think they might be a little
Keep
overblown.
your pulse on the future. Right now, you're saying it's fairly nascent in terms of the technology, and right now you're not too concerned, but you're keeping your pulse on it.
You must keep an eye on it, right? But but I'm also, I mean, like, Bima, I'm also a big believer here, right? That I really do believe, right? I think well, this was before we started recording, right? But at that point, we mentioned something, or I was pulling a quote which I still can't source in my head, right? But about how the only lever for human progress is increase in productivity,
Sure. Okay,
right? That's
we're going to talk about productivity and no jobs and no productivity.
sure.
Last question on this AI thing. Do you foresee an AI generated host who's hosting your podcast, and then you don't need to deal with, human beings, you don't need to deal with their cost, tantrums, availability,
I
and
mean,
a voice, right, asking questions to maybe a real host or a real sort of human being,
I
but
mean, I mean, like, can it happen at some point in the future? Absolutely, it will happen, right? When you start looking at virtual environments which are being created by Meta or Apple right now at this point in time, or even Second Life way back when, right? When you start looking at virtual environments like that, I mean, like, it's only natural that these things will start coming in, right? Because you don't let's say you are in a virtual environment and you're interacting with um a television show ka virtual space,
hmm,
right? And you're going to need somebody to take you through it, but your questions are going to be unique. The only way to really kind of deal with that is either A, have a human being over there, or B, have some sort of AI interaction that is kind of taking you to through the space that you want to, right? So I think it's inevitable that it happens to some degree. I think that for what we do, I don't want to sound like somebody who's a luddite about this, right? But at the same time, I think that that what human beings bring to the table, right? Individuality, creativity, all that kind of stuff. I don't think that gets replaced, right? I mean, like when you look at the most popular podcast hosts in India today, right? They're not bots. They're very distinct personalities, right? Like whether it is Cyrus Brocha who works with us, or more or popular folks like Ranveer Alabadia, or folks like Samdesh, or folks like Dhruv Rathi. They're all individuals, right? I mean, like, and one of the things.
they're all individuals today because we still don't have this influx of AI hosts.
Mhm.
You might have a situation where like every podcasting company now has top five AI hosts who have a personality, a look, feel, voice, all of that we have as human beings.
I would say that I don't see it as an impossibility, but I also don't see it as like inevitability, right? I just I don't know. I really don't, right? I mean, like, could it happen? Yes, it could, but I also like if I think that I mean, like, AI is going to be a tool.
Hmm.
I don't think AI is going to be something like right now we're talking in the course of the conversation. There is something that sparks in your mind, which is a which comes from your experience,
Sure.
right? Just based on that. And that leads to the follow up question.
Hmm.
The AI's experience is every AI's experience.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
follow up question that comes from there,
Hmm.
right, is not going to be as perceptive or as kind of individualistic as the follow-up question that comes from an individual, right? So again, I don't want to, like, I don't want to be a luddite. I don't want to be like saying that
Okay.
this stuff is not going to go anywhere, but I just I don't see I don't see the path to human replacement.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Point noted. Quite clear. I think you have a very strong view on this, and it's quite clear. Okay, let's talk about what you were saying about this AI bringing in productivity gain, and then
Yeah.
productivity gain, of course, as we know, is sort of futuristic. It's the way to go, etc.
Hmm.
But there's also Sam Altman who says in the future there will be no jobs, and we will be living off of what they're calling universal basic income. Governments will be, it sort of sounds like a communist society, right? Where the government will
Yeah.
be sharing out this money and basically people will have no work. So there are two views on this, either massive increase in productivity or a situation where we said, hey, now these podcasters have AI generated RJs, everything, all my office work is being done by a bot, and then we
Mhm.
have no jobs. So obviously these are two extreme views. Where do you see the dust sort of settling? What do you think?
Well, I am actually completely against the idea that people will not do stuff.
You
I
think
can't
people
see
will
that.
do stuff?
Yeah, I can't see that, right? I think, again, I mean, like, if, as somebody writing a book about the future of work, I'm sure you have heard there are no buggy manufacturers anymore comparison a billion times, right? And I would say that there are going, work will evolve, work will change, right? But I think that at the end of it, and there will always be some proportion of people, and there are some proportion of people today who are happier not to work or happier just sitting around, getting drunk, reading books, watching television, doing drugs, whatever, right? There are some proportion of people who are always going to be like that.
Sure.
Uh, there's some proportion of people who are always going to be like, hey, I want to travel to 700 countries in the or 700 cities in the next 2 years, right? There's some proportion of people who are always going to be like that. There are also always going to be some proportion of people who are kind of, I don't want to say defined by their work, but who also kind of have drive towards doing certain things, who want to do things and be like, I mean, like, I think you've been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs. I think one thing that I've seen, I did a show where we were interviewing entrepreneurs, right? And in the course of that show, one commonality, people come from all different kinds of spaces, all different kinds of areas, all different expertises, grew up wherever, come from whatever circumstance, whatever. What is the commonality between somebody who was an entrepreneur in that context, right? They were driven to do something. They don't even know what.
Sure. They have the drive though, and
They have
drive.
a drive to. When I started IVM, I started it from two ideas, right? Or not two ideas. So basically, I was running a business. That business was nearing its time to end, right? Basically, me and my partners weren't getting along. We wanted to figure something else out, etc., etc. I wanted to start a new thing. When I was starting a new thing, I didn't start IVM because I had some like crazy passion for podcasting, right? I like podcasts. I was a listener for like 10 years before I started, but it wasn't that, right? It was I want to do something interesting and cool, which will let me work with and interact with cool people, which will basically in some way, some way, shape or form, make your mark, right? I mean, like that's the thing, right? Make your mark in some way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? That's what drove me, right? The other idea I had was a e-commerce idea, right? I mean, like there was some content in there, but it was an e-commerce idea, right? So I mean, like it was about trying to figure. I wanted to do something, and I feel like that's the commonality you find between people, right? So there's
And
always going to be some degree of people who are going to be. I'm
you
sorry.
see, that's not going to change. That's sort of like an
How
eternal
does?
sort of trait. People, there are
Yeah,
going to be factions of society that will have
yeah,
this drive, and they're going to want to do something. They're going to want to sit
yeah.
around and like
And
consume this AR, VR content on their screens all day.
and we don't know what they're going to want to do and the kinds of things they're going to want to do. If AR and VR can do it, great. But you know what will also probably happen? There will be things that they come up they want to do with which only people can do, and so then that's how employment continues to happen, right? And again, yeah, and I mean, like, so I don't buy that, there are going to be no jobs and we're all going to be on universal basic income, sitting on the beaches of Goa, hanging out, and just like,
Yeah.
I can't see it. I mean, like, I don't see that as a likely, 100-year out future.
You don't see that, huh?
I
Even
don't
after
see it.
you're out, you don't see that.
I mean, maybe I'm working in Goa because you know what? Goa is a nice place to work out of, and I'm having my meetings in virtual reality so I can sit on the beach and have those meetings. And it might be that, the way that I am interacting with the world might have a lot more robotics, might have a lot more AI, might have a lot more all kinds of things. But I can't see a situation where I'm not dealing with human beings as well.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So you're saying human drive will continue to exist. And sure, means might change, methods might change, locations might change, all that might happen. But at the core of it, human beings will continue to put in some productive hours a day.
I mean,
Hours might change.
hours might change, right? And again, the numbers might change, right? In terms of how many people are doing this,
Sure. Okay.
right? Like right now, I think if I remember correctly, something like 52% of India works, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. That might become 35% because the rest are not as motivated. It might become 70% because, oh my God, this is so much fun to do.
Hmm.
Who knows?
Hmm.
I mean, like, we don't know what exactly those jobs are going to be right now. I just have faith that they're going to show up.
Okay, you have faith that they're going to show up. You have faith in the human spirit and drive of entrepreneurs. And you feel as a country, obviously, we're entrepreneur and that's not dying anytime soon.
Mhm.
Okay, terrific. Let's talk a little bit about content. So, how is your consumer, like the whole millennial shift? How has the consumer shifted? And
Mhm.
how are you seeing this consumer go from millennial to Gen Z to then Gen Alpha? What are sort of trends in consumer patterns and consumer behavior you're seeing as you evolve your content strategy?
So I would say one of the things that I've seen, right, like is there is most. So I think okay, so let me approach this from the content creator side rather than from the consumer side, because I'll answer the question, but from so one of the things that I've seen, right, is that as content creators, there is a tendency to do what has worked,
Okay.
right? And because of that, I think people wind up following certain emphases in terms of the kinds of content that they're putting out based on basically things which are not about the consumption of the content. Okay, so or not about the content itself, rather. So what winds up happening is that okay, I'll give you a very specific example. In 2010 to 2015, okay, YouTube was very much focused on the 3 minute content piece.
Sure.
And that's why you saw the proliferation of 3 minute YouTube videos, because YouTube would juice this algorithm so that the 3 minute videos would go up. Then from 2015 to 2021, 22, it was the 10 minute videos,
Hmm.
right? Now in 2022, it's the 2 hour, 3 hour videos, right? And you're seeing content creators proliferate in these kinds of time frames, right? Now, the question I would ask is that is this a how big a impact does the algorithm of a YouTube like platform or a TikTok, Instagram like platform or a and this is not an algorithm, but it is distribution, which is essentially the same thing, but a television channel like Z or Star Plus. How much of an impact does that have on what choices people are making from a content creation point of view, and how does those choices on the creation side drive consumption,
Hmm.
right? And I think
Almost a
that
chicken and egg problem, no? Like
it
I
is
consume what's available, but hey, now you're actually as the content person, you're trying to figure out what I like.
Mhm.
Me as a consumer, I'm like, oh, I'm at your mercy. I'm consuming what you give me. So it's a
Exactly. But I think the point, the second step I would take from there, right, is that what we will see as particularly as some of these technologies that we are talking about right now, AI particularly, right? AI is going to become more and more personal. Right now, we see the most generalist way when
Hmm.
we're talking about a large language model, right? But AI is going to become more and more personal. That means that distribution is going to become more and more individualized. That means that and this was a dream of the internet that people used to talk about, right? That essentially everybody will find their own niches, 1,000 true fans, all of that stuff, right? But as your own AI is mining the internet for content that is going to be towards your own personal choice, I think what will wind up happening is that as a content creator, you're going to have to get away from that. Let me follow
Hmm.
what the distribution aggregation point algorithm or existing customer base is driving me towards. You're going to then have to become more driven from a creative point of view, from a individualistic point of view, in terms of I want to make this because I think I can make this well. And when you do that, I think you're going to then your content will continue to proliferate, but you will find your this. So then I think so. This is a long way of saying that basically don't allow audiences to drive your content, because if you do that, then
Hmm.
you're one of many people doing this. And in the world where things become more individualistic, which I think is an inevitable consequence of AI 5 years, 10 years down the line, I think that would be a road to not great outcomes.
Okay, okay. So you're saying the content creator focus on good content, find your niche, find what you're good at, put it out, and as long as the content is good, the audience will exist for it.
The audience will be found. And again, I mean, like, don't chase an algorithm, don't chase an audience, right? I think that when you do that, it gets a little this, right?
Okay.
And so I don't know if I answered your question about like how audience behavior is evolving, right? Because I think that I
It's
kind of,
not like consumer changes, as the generations change. What are you
yeah,
seeing shifts?
I think so when we do some studies and stuff like that, right? Like, so we generally put out long content, and so we've done some studies around this kind of stuff, and the people who are consuming our content are knowledge seekers generally, right?
Knowledge.
And so
Okay.
yeah, and so I don't know that. But again, like I mean, like let's be perfectly blunt about this, right? Like the numbers that I get compared to the numbers that like somebody like a Film Companion gets. I'm making that comparison because they're English language, right? But Film Companion has like, Vicky Kaushal shows up on their shows, and like Katrina Kaif shows up on their shows, and like, Anupama will be doing interviews with like, Nasruddin Shah and this and that. And, all these big names show up, whereas ours are not those kinds of names,
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, like, uh, our universes are different in that sense, even though we're both in the English language universe. And again, they make smarter film content than a lot of other people do.
Sure.
So there is some overlap still, but they're still different universes, right? So uh, my general feeling, my personal feeling around this stuff, right? And again, this is a little more instinctual than number driven, but my personal feeling around this is that um, people exist for all different kinds of content to make to make large sweeping thoughts about Gen Z though wants 30-second content, or
Correct.
I mean,
You hear
like,
this a lot. You hear this everywhere.
yeah, I don't buy it.
Next generation wants small snippets. They don't have the patience. They can't sit through long form. Then I talk to filmmakers and they say long form is not dying. We're going to make full length features, 2 hour, 3 hours, and we can see
Yeah,
it in the theaters. It's working.
it is. So I mean, like, I find it hard to give too much. So what do people want? People want good stuff,
Hmm.
right? And that is the core thing right now. Then if you then starting to slice it around, like, oh, they are doing this and they're doing that and they're doing that. These are all mediums, right? I mean, like, whether it's a 30-second to 1 minute Instagram reel, or a 2 minute YouTube video, or a 1 hour OTT show, or a 3 hour movie theater show,
Hmm.
right? They're all mediums of basically engaging the mind, and I think that's what's important now. How do you engage the mind? Different spaces are going to have different kinds of engagement, right? Like when a movie is engaging you at one level, whereas a podcast is engaging you at a different level, whereas an Instagram reel is engaging you at a different level, right? uh, I consume all three types,
Hmm.
right? So I feel like people make too much of the, this is where the audience is, this
Okay.
is the kind of thing the audience is going, right? I just do like, what's ever died, right? Vibha, what's died?
Yeah, yeah, the radio still is. I mean, everyone.
Radio is still around, the physical books are still around,
Yeah.
uh,
Libraries are still
paintings are
around.
still around, sculpture is still around, nothing dies.
Hmm. Okay, good. So it seems like the categories get broader and broader. The consumer
Mm,
now has more choices,
that
and
is true.
that is great. And you also very beautifully said that you don't believe in these generalizations. There's no such thing as like millennials like this and Gen Z like that. It's as long as the content is good, there is an audience for it.
There's an audience, and it'll be a certain kind of audience, right? Like the people who are going to consume a, I was just watching this 8 episode documentary about Alexander the Great on Netflix. The people who are going to consume that are going to be much, much lower in number than the people who are going to consume the, what is the new show that came out, the British show, The Gentleman. That's going
Yeah,
to be a bigger number.
yeah, right.
It just is, right? I mean, like, so there are going to be different types of audiences consuming different kinds of content. I just, yeah, that's how I look at it.
Okay, can we talk a little bit about the workspace? You've been running this organization for a very long time, and we're seeing it. All of us are seeing it. All these entrepreneurs are seeing it. We're seeing a shift in our workspaces. We're
Yes.
seeing this influx of younger people come in. They
Hmm.
come with different mindsets. They come with different approaches. They come with different asks. So, how are you seeing this shift, and where do you see this shifting to going forward?
Uh, okay. We have some honestly, we had some issues there. Just
We
to
all
be
have
clear.
issues there. So great.
Huh?
Okay. We all have
Yeah, no,
issues.
I mean, I like, the thing is that so here's the thing, right? My co-founder Kavita and I talk about this quite often, right? We came into work at a time where people could treat us horribly,
Hmm.
like horribly, right? Like I've had shit thrown at me. Like, to get abused was not really a thing. The
This is
degree of
when you were working for somebody
when
else.
I was working for somebody else, right? The amount of sexism that
Hmm.
women generally kind of experience, like casual sexism, right? Like not even like I'm not even talking about harassment.
Okay.
Harassment was at a different thing altogether, but I'm just mean like casual sexism, right? The amount of stuff that kind of that was visible then, it
Hmm.
was such a horrendous world. I think that people like us, when we started our businesses, so people in my age group, if you will, we overcorrected,
Hmm.
right? We allowed things to become we're like, we don't want to be asshole bosses, right? And we overcorrected on that, which has led to and I so this is a conversation I've had with many of my friends, many entrepreneurs, not just in India but also in the also in the US and Europe, Australia, Singapore. And a lot of us kind of like, this is something that resonates with a lot of us, that we don't want to be bad to
Yeah, but
we
we don't want to be bad, but you're saying we overcorrected. And the same
yeah,
phenomena you're seeing in parenting, right? We were
yeah,
brought up a certain way, but now people have overcorrected the
yeah.
parent. I want to talk about this over. I want to know how you feel you went over.
So, like, not enforcing a time that you need to report at office strictly.
You have that?
Yeah, we have that. As dumb as that is, right? I
Hmm.
had somebody show up for, like, the junior most member of the team showed up for something 20 minutes late yesterday.
Hmm.
And I'm just thinking, I remember my first job was as an assistant director on a Bollywood movie.
Lavaris, no?
Lavaris, correct. And I went to the producer who was our boss, right? I was an assistant director, but the producer is the guy who cuts the paycheck, right? I went to the producer and I was like, "So what are my working hours? I would like to know, right?" And his answer to me was, "You have to show up 1 hour before the director shows up, and you have to leave 1 hour after the director leaves. Those are your working hours, right?" And I mean, and that was kind of ludicrous, right, in its own way. That's also not
Yeah.
realistic
Yeah.
thing to make out of to kind of put to people, right? And so, I mean, like, you kind of turned it into something where you're like, you know what, we're not going to be that kind of this. And now you have a situation where somebody shows up 20 minutes late for a shoot,
Hmm.
and that's not
That's not
okay,
actually,
right?
right.
So I mean, like, these kinds of things are a little frustrating. General attitudes around
But you have a no punch in, no punch out policy as of now.
well, we so no, we did put a punch in punch out policy just so that we could kind of, because it became ludicrous at some point in time. But at the same time, we're not cutting salaries unless it's egregious.
Ah, okay.
We're not getting into a kind of like, oh, you're 5 minutes late, we're going to give you half day. We're not doing that kind of thing, right? But at the same time, what we
But we've
did,
all gone through that.
yeah,
It's happened to me in New York. It's happened to me in Bombay. I've had jobs where 20 minutes meant X amount is cut from your salary.
yeah, I know,
Everyone followed the rules, and the guy was sitting with a register. There was no
yeah.
punching in, also. The register would
Right,
sign.
at what time you're signing in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. No, this is what I mean by overcorrection, right? Like, basically, I don't want to be that asshole. So I'm like, okay, you know what? If you're a couple of minutes here and there, I'm not going to be that, because I know that you'll make it up at the end of the day.
Sure.
But then we saw that people are not making up at the end of the day, right? In the sense that, and then that's why we're like, okay, you know what? At least let's log how many hours you're doing. 'Cause the first way that we kind of set this up was, right, that basically you can show up anytime between 9 and 12 in the morning, and based on what time you leave between 6 and 9 in the evening.
Sure.
That's how we set it up, right? So basically 12 to 6 is common hours. Everybody needs to be in the office. That became a kind of like, people would show up at 11:30 and they would leave at like 7, or sorry, they leave at like 6:15, and it's just like, what the hell's going on here?
Mhm.
And so then that became this. So and I don't want to turn this into, like, let's bitch about young people kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But it was a there is a challenge. I'll tell you one other challenge that I have, right, as a company doing what we do. Um, I don't. This is going to sound a little dismissive towards my own business, right? But the people who join podcasting are people who are they're very driven to do certain. They want to do podcasting type things. The people who want to do podcasting type things are not desperate for the job. You know what I mean? They are. It's generally, they come from slightly more privileged backgrounds,
Mm. Okay.
and what that leads to is a it leads to a general attitude which is a little like, and again, I don't want we don't want to be like don't want to be like, that you must be here at this time, you don't want to be like strict, right? But at the same time, there is a certain amount of, oh, I can leave this whenever I want to leave, this kind of attitude. And that also is hard to make a team work in that, right? And so then that became a filter for us to also kind of, so there are so many different aspects to this, right? Whether even things like, I'm a proponent of mental health. Again, I think that people should manage their mental health. They should pay attention to it. But I also think that's an area where overcorrection has happened,
Hmm.
where having a tough conversation with somebody becomes, you're affecting my mental health,
Right, right.
right? And I'm sorry, but you need to be able to take a tough conversation, because not everything is always happy, happy, joy, joy. Sometimes things are wrong.
Hmm.
And that's sometimes, it proves particularly challenging with younger employees,
Okay.
because I got annoyed with somebody once and I snapped at them, right? And the snapping was something like, listen, if you can't do this, then maybe you should quit.
Hmm.
That was the snapping.
Did
It
he
turned
quit?
it, huh?
Did
No,
he?
they didn't quit. They got offended. They got so offended, they came and spoke to me 3 times about this.
No.
That
Okay.
you can't talk to me like that. How can you talk to me like that? I'm like, dude, I just said very quickly that if you cannot do this the way it needs to be done, then you should quit. I did not say that do this or I'll fire you.
Hmm.
I said, if you cannot do this the way it needs to be done, then you should quit. If you cannot take that much feedback,
That's a
then
problem.
that's a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing, right? And that is another problem that's there, right? Everybody is become a lot more resistant to feedback than they used to be, I think.
Hmm.
uh because honestly, I again, and when I was younger and I was working in, whether it's at Lavaris, or whether it was like at the ad agency that I worked at for a while, or whether it was when I was working in the US, I
Hmm.
had no choice but to take feedback.
Sure.
Because if I didn't take the feedback, then I would be hurled abuses at.
Right, right.
So you had no choice but to take the feedback. But over here, it's yeah, man, I sound old.
But okay, so it is a shift. It is a big shift.
There is.
It's probably because I don't know, the parenting has shifted. Earlier, your teenage years are different.
Mhm.
Schools are more sensitive about giving feedback. So when the system shifts like that from your home to your school in your early years, then that's what you're expecting in the workspace, right? Some level of lack of resilience, lack of wanting to hear
Can I
what.
add one more like thing into this masala? All of the Instagram slash LinkedIn slash Facebook slash TikTok work culture
Hmm.
stuff that happens there, right? Like the Tim Ferriss 4 hour work week nonsense, which he himself does not do,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? But he calls his book 4 hour work week, right?
Yeah.
Like all of this stuff, which
Trolling for
is,
Narayan Murthy, right? Like that
uh,
was the other flip side of it.
yeah. No, but again, here is the thing, right? That Narayan Murthy is right. If you want to build something like Infosys, you have to put in 70 hours a week.
Yeah, exactly.
You cannot not want to work and then also want success. Both things don't happen correspondingly.
Yeah, everyone works. Zuckerberg work.
Yeah,
Everyone. I've seen them work. So the Silicon Valley works very, very hard.
I
They're not
know.
hanging around in Santa Clara on the beach. They're working.
No, that's just it, right? And I think that that's the thing is that it is these two things combined, right? It is both the effort that we're going to we put in has to make our work life balance work,
Hmm.
right? That is the I have a friend who made the joke, or I don't even think it was a joke. He's like, the second somebody says the word work life balance in an interview, it's a reject,
Hmm.
right? And I mean, like, it is, I feel like that's not a unreasonable point of view to take, because if you're going to mention that in the interview, you are unlikely to be a long term productive employee for us,
Hmm.
right? Everybody understands that this is not 1995 or 1980. We
Yeah.
all understand that. We all understand that you're going to have, but to mention in the interview means that you're laying out boundaries before you even started working for me,
Hmm.
which I think is a very interesting kind of this, right? But yeah, no, but I think all of this kind of like, this this mix of or rather this reaction of hustle culture, right? Like when like you see people writing stuff on these platforms sometimes, which I'm just like, nobody is asking for blind loyalty from you towards the company that you work for or towards the job that you do. That is unrealistic, but it is also unrealistic for you to think that you can consistently take advantage of everything that the company is giving you, and it's not going to have an impact on your future career path,
Hmm.
right? And I think that is the thing, right? Because the fact that a promotion is absolutely guaranteed every year is the way people think about this stuff, right? A raise is absolutely
Guaranteed.
guaranteed
Yes.
every year.
Yeah, you don't give the raise, people leave. They say, hey, you didn't give my
Yeah,
raise, leaving.
that's fine. I mean, like, that is something that will work for a short period of time. And I think that honestly, if you are somebody who doesn't get a raise, there's probably a reason why you didn't get a raise. And that examination is not something you want to do.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Very, very good. Thank you for this. I'm sensing exactly what you're saying. So I'm nodding away as you're talking because I'm seeing this all around me. I'm seeing it with friends. There is definitely it is a drastic shift. Mental health is an issue and it must be recognized. But I'm also seeing it being loosely, to use that word, in the office space. It's being used, like saying, "Hey, I've got to deal with my mental health. I need to be home for a week."
Yeah.
Um,
And not, I'll give you a example, right? So I'm not going to name any names over here, but we had somebody who worked with us, was a producer, organized a recording on a Saturday, which we generally don't work on Saturdays, but you're allowed to do that, whatever, whatever, whatever. I find out on Friday evening from the person who is running our production team that this producer has organized this recording on Saturday, but is not going to be there at the recording
uh,
because has to go for a psychiatrist appointment.
yeah,
I'm like, why did you organize the recording?
yeah.
He's like, and basically it turned into a like person quit after mental health, this, that, whatever, right? But I'm like, you can't not do your job.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah, of course.
will be respectful of mental health. Nobody told you to set this recording up on a Saturday,
Yeah, yeah.
and nobody said that you can't change the. I mean, if you have to set this recording up on a Saturday, that's the job. Then
Mhm.
you have to deal with your psychiatrist and say that, hey, I cannot come on this Saturday. Can you give me an appointment on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday instead?
Correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it is being used and maybe a little bit abused.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that segues well into skilling. So if these are the issues, how should we think about skilling? How should the next generation be thinking about critical skills from an employer perspective? And do you have any suggestions or advice to universities that sort of are helping universities and schools
Mhm.
that are helping get these kids future ready? What should they be doing?
I mean, like, the again, this is somewhat cliche, right? But when I came back from the US, right, one of the things that me and some of and again, we picked this up from somewhere, right? But some of me and my friends who had come back from the US at that point in time, we were talking, and we were all starting businesses like within a few years, right? So this is 25, 26 years old at that time. So we're all starting business. The conversation that we were having in terms of how we're trying to recruit people and stuff like that. One of the challenges we found, and again, this is a while ago, and I know things have changed since then, but back then, but I think that this still exists to some extent. We felt that when you went to college in the US, particularly to a reasonably decent one, what you learned over there was not the subject matter. What you learned was how to learn,
Sure.
how to understand stuff, how to figure stuff out, how to navigate through knowledge you don't have to find the knowledge you need. And we felt that was kind of really lacking in a lot of the Indian graduates who we were interviewing for different positions. I
Hmm.
don't want to say that it's universal because we are not like,
Are you seeing
the
that now? Are you seeing it happening now when you're hiring?
I see that to an extent right now.
You see it now.
I see it right now. I see that there is a uncomfortableness with flexibility,
Okay.
right? Like in the sense that if you if your job involves doing part one, part two, part three, part four, over 3 months you will understand part one, part two, part three, part four quite well. But if part two disappears and you need to make it from part one to part three sometimes somehow, you will just be at a loss. You will put your hands up, you will try, and and sometimes you will not go, and some of the thing is also there is we try to create an atmosphere where people feel like they can come and ask questions if they have issues and trouble and stuff like that. But even despite that, and I think that we have done that to a great degree, but there are still people who we do see this with, where they feel like, if I can't do this, I will be in trouble, so I should not go and talk to anybody about it, right? But they're still not able to navigate this stuff, and so then it kind of leads to a problem. And I think the inability to be flexible around how to accomplish a task, or the inability to think from what is my task and what is my goal, instead of what are the steps involved to finish, to what are the steps involved, is an area where I see like problems, right? uh, it is one, and again, I'll be very honest here, we are not hiring from like the biggest colleges in India.
Sure, sure.
So it's not like we are hiring like, people who are
Hmm.
at the we're
The elite,
hiring smart
right?
people, but we're not hiring like, we don't have IIM employees, we don't have IIT employees, we don't have like, symbiosis employees, we don't have those kinds, right? We have people who are coming from more general normal colleges and those kinds of things. But I think that this is something that, it's a function of how they're taught more
Hmm.
than of how they are themselves.
What should they be doing? What should, if a university is listening to this, what would you tell them? How would, because you need this workforce. We all
Yeah,
need.
you do. Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I think what winds up, I don't know that there's an easy answer over here, because universities have to evaluate people at scale,
Hmm.
right? And the thing that is needed is a kind of like, more mentorship driven kind of guidance,
Yeah, yeah.
because so I don't know that there is a solution to this from the university. I don't know what the solution is. I'm just laying out where I see
Not
like
much.
the challenges, right? I don't know what the solution to this is.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. So lack of flexibility, lack of being adjust to uncertainty, which these are all very scary, right? Because that's what the future is going to require.
It
So
is.
why you
That's
thinking?
what makes it even more frightening, right? Because it all needs to be this as you go ahead.
Okay.
You don't know that today I'm working in like, today I have to prompt AI to do this. Tomorrow I have to sit and figure out how to make virtual reality, and tomorrow I have to figure out how I'm going to write the script. You have to, if
And
you're
two
going
years
to,
from now, generative AI might become redundant and the next thing
yeah,
will.
yeah, and you have to be able to like, you need to be able to kind of figure this stuff out. And if you can't figure this stuff out, it's going to be problematic for you as you progress in your career.
Okay, awesome. On the topic of skilling and education, if you had to go back to college, now you have all this amazing foresight. You've been working, you've
Mhm.
built this organization, you sort of have a pulse on the future. If you had to go back to college today, if you were going to
Mhm.
advise a young person today saying, hey, here's what I think. If you want to be in the media and entertainment space broadly, here's what I think you should go study. What would you recommend in terms of a degree education?
Wow. I would recommend two things. I mean, like a double major if possible.
Double
Uh,
major.
well, I mean, like I'd recommend two things, right? So one is I would recommend writing.
Okay.
Okay, because writing is the fundamental building block of everything that happens when in the media, whether it is a book, whether it is a movie, whether it is a TV show, whether it's a podcast, whether it is whatever, right? Writing is the fundamental. So basically, whatever your language is, go and study the literature and language of
Hmm.
that particular thing. The other thing is you must develop technical skills which are flexible. You can't get scared by technology,
Hmm.
right? And I think that that happens a lot, right? That when it comes to like I feel that one of the most valuable courses that I ever took when I was in college was a television production course, in studio television production course. It basically evaporated all the fear I had towards wires going into cameras, going into focus,
Hmm.
into lenses, into how do you basically make signals transfer, and how do you mix an audio signal with a video signal, like all that stuff. Basically, I still don't know like exactly how it happens, but
Right.
it helped
But you're not
me.
scared of it.
I'm not scared of it, right? And I think that one of the things that I do see in a lot of younger employees is I don't want to say fear, because fear is too strong, but a
Apprehension.
hesitancy to kind of let me just figure this shit out,
Hmm.
instead of let me go to four people who are going to give me guidance and then figure out. It's not that complicated. At least I don't think it is that complicated. I think that, so I would say some kind of technical piece,
Hmm.
right, which is designed more than anything else to make it so that you're not afraid to go into like, a piece of technical equipment, or go into a piece of go into a new computer program
Hmm.
and figure out how to do something over there. And the other thing is language. I think language is most important.
Okay, awesome. So language, but then coupled with this technical piece, so you're sort of self-sufficient and you're not sort of dependent on other people, and you understand the
And it gives,
overall context of what's going
yeah, it gives you the flexibility. Again, this is where flexibility comes, right? Like today, if you want to be able to be flexible, you need to be articulate what you want to kind of accomplish, but
on.
you also need to be able to figure out a new tool, because if
Play with the
I'm
tools. Okay, okay, terrific. Okay, let's talk a little bit about changes in careers.
Mhm.
Do you see certain careers, either in your industry or generally evaporating, where you're like, hey, listen, 10 years ago, 10 years from now, these careers are just going to evaporate? And do you see new careers emerging where you're like, hey, we don't have people like this today, but I foresee hiring this sort of career belt?
That's an interesting question. I don't think that I can't see anything evaporating. I can see it becoming much more efficient.
Hmm.
For example, a video editor who is editing a podcast, there will be efficiencies brought in by AI usage. So we already use a tool in AI for a podcast edit. It runs our first edit through that. What it does is that, let's say I have three camera shots. I have a three camera shoot. One is on me, one is on you, one is a joint shot. And the AI, what it'll do is it will analyze the voice of who is saying what, and based on that, it will make a first cut from me,
Okay.
right? Like, so when I'm talking, it'll show me. When you are talking, it'll show you. Every 5 seconds, it'll make sure, or every 10 seconds, it'll make sure it's showing both of us. Then again, it'll cut individual, whoever is talking, it'll show most. So there's already AI tools like that. So that makes our video editor's job much more efficient. But it also means I need, like, earlier, this work that I'm talking about is on a 1 hour podcast. To just do the switching, the first set of switching is a day's work.
Hmm. Now you need like lesser work.
Now that 1 day ka work evaporates, but what that does is that means that instead of doing one of these things, this editor being able to do one project, he can do two projects.
Hmm. Okay. So productivity hack,
Yeah,
productivity in,
yeah.
but you don't see the video editor per
I
se.
don't see the video editor going away. I don't see the audio editor going away. I don't see the producer going away. I don't see the host going away. Uh, I mean, maybe the graphic designer's job changes significantly.
Hmm.
I think logos will still need to be created by individuals at this point in time, but maybe some of the more but we've been automating that stuff even without AI.
Hmm.
Like when it comes to images with only text changes, there are ways to just automate a Photoshop job so that you're just taking an Excel file card, text, putting that on the image, and generating a new app.
Yeah.
So, that kind of stuff's been happening for a while.
Hmm.
Uh,
Anything new that you're seeing coming in? Anything where you feel like, hey, we're not hiring for this right now, but pretty strong possibility.
I think that we will be, I mean, like, we will be hiring people who are better and better at using AI, but I think that kind of is that's growth that certain creatives within the creative kind of team that we have, that is, they should be growing in that space as well,
Hmm.
right? So I feel like it's an evolution of that job more than it is a new job.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, is there anything new? Well, virtual reality, augmented reality, right? Like, I'm sure that in the next 10 years, podcasts that are created as, say, video podcasts will also be available as virtual reality, right? And so then how do you kind of make that? So I guess that might be one area that we would.
Okay.
Um, but
Okay.
everything else I see as an evolution. I honestly, I see, like, people have to evolve. If you are going to do the same things that you are doing today, your job will not be there.
Hmm.
But the functions, the broad functions of, okay, we need to have this kind of work done, we need to have this kind of work done, we need, let me be more specific, we need to have video editing work done, or video creation work done, or video packaging work done,
Sure.
we need audio packaging work done, we need somebody to be a creative supervisor.
Okay. So the functions will remain the same because that's the nature of the industry.
Yeah,
The functional experts will need to evolve to
they
ensure that.
they will need to be at the cutting edge when it comes to what kind of tools they're using. If they don't do that, then I think that they are doomed.
Okay, cool. Last question, and
Yes.
then we'll let you go. I ask this question to everyone. Are you generally optimistic about the future? Are you just saying, hey, it's going to be a great future, there's lots of great things happening? Or is there a sense of pessimism where you're like, hey, but
I am super optimistic.
this is super
I,
optimistic. Okay,
I
wow.
am super optimistic. I think that uh, I will say the line for the third time, right? The only thing that improves the human condition is improvement in productivity, right?
Mm,
And I think that the gains in productivity that we are about to see are so far beyond anything that we have seen in history
mm,
that I feel like we are literally at the, like, the bottom of that, whatever that curve is called, the exponential curve, right? I feel like we're just starting to touch the edge of that in terms of where human progress is. Uh, the fact, even now, right? Like some of the stuff that we are complaining about right now, right? The fact that we are complaining about the fact that people are complaining about their mental health
mm,
is a indication of productivity, is an indication of advancement,
mm.
right? Because 30 years ago, nobody is complaining about mental health ago.
Mm,
100 years ago, anybody complaining about mental health is put into an asylum.
mm,
You know what I mean? So the fact that we are able to even talk, the complaints that we have are indicative of human progress.
mm.
So I am like so optimistic. It's not even funny about, because we don't even know what kinds of things are going to be there, right? What are the kinds of what is VR going to lead to? What is AR going to lead to? Right? I remember seeing so Microsoft had made those glasses a while ago. I don't know if they ever actually kind of went further, but I remember at the time seeing like some of the stuff that they were showing where they were called the HoloLens, right? And so you're wearing a HoloLens, and I, as somebody who doesn't know anything about electricals, what I can do is that I will look at my box. It will tell me unscrew this, unscrew this, unscrew this. Like, it'll give me directions on the thing. That's amazing, right? I mean, like, that just means that I mean, like, that can be extrapolated into like 100 different things. So I'm super optimistic about like just what the future of work is, how easy it gets to do that stuff. And again, we're not going to sit with the stuff that we have right now. We're going to build new things.
Okay. Amit Doshi, excited about the future. Sound like a child in this candy store, and this candy store is going to open up the future for us. And I hope this optimism continues. And I hope your perspective and your optimism in the future is really how it pans out, because that would be great for all of us and for mankind to come. This was an amazing conversation. You've been extremely candid. You've illustrated all your points and perspectives with very, very specific and detailed examples. And you've really given me a lens into the podcasting space. So thank you for all that clarity and that candidness. I really look forward to continuing this conversation and
Uh,
keep you updated on the progress of the book.
awesome. Sounds great.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.